you can't expect that you're going to show up on race day and that you're just a game time player and that what happens in practice doesn't matter. You show up on game day and suddenly you have like this amazing strength. Doesn't happen. Yeah. You need to.
I've heard of game day speed before, but that's usually in like a 10-yard box.
Exactly right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Being slouches.
I just want to draw quick attention to the fact that Coach Chris is wearing two different socks.
Two different.
But in his defense,
because
they're
they look
the same
similar
color.
He thinks that since they're the same color, it's okay.
I mean, yeah.
He says he's testing.
He's testing the Feature and Brooks high visibility socks.
Yeah.
Review coming soon. Coach Chris will be doing a review here soon for you.
So today we are talking about last minute marathon preparation.
Yes.
We're like 2.5 weeks out from the St. Jude Marathon. So we're pretty sure there's a number of people out there that are freaking out about the upcoming event they've got on the calendar.
The people that kept saying, oh, it's still 8 weeks away.
Still 8 weeks.
7 weeks away. Oh, it's still a long time away. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it's not very far away.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, it's coming.
Is it really?
And you've got to make it through Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I was actually thinking about that yesterday. I was like, that's actually pretty good planning for people that aren't wanting to overindulge through Thanksgiving. You know, if you're actually serious about the race, you'd probably do a little less indulging during Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I will probably not eat quite as much.
Dale's only going to go with 3 trips back to the old...
you minus 1 trip is enough, right?
Don't you think if they were saying that the race is only 8 weeks, 7, 6, 5, then those people are probably more likely to say, oh, it's only one helping of macaroni
it's only
and cheese.
one extra
It's only
helping.
one extra turkey leg.
Possibly.
Probably. All right, so we're going to cover some good information on what you should be doing in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, what you should not be doing in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, and then we're going to throw in some tips for those that are going, holy crap, I've botched my training. What do I do? So, but first, shout-outs.
Shout-outs. Love them. Love the shout-outs.
I have to go a big one today. Phillip, the machine. Phillip, Instagramless Philly. Hashtag Instagramless Philly.
Wait a minute, he doesn't have Instagram?
He won't. No, he'll never find it on Instagram. His wife will.
I respect you.
But Phillip Young, he pulled off an age group national championship at Aquabike, long course Aquabike Nationals in Miami. So shout out MiamiMan.
Huge. And Memphis bringing home 3 national
3 total.
Championships from that event.
So shout out Leslie Brainard.
Nice.
And her mom.
And her mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leslie's she was the overall female winner in the long course, basically a half iron distance race. And then her mother was I think it was long course duathlon.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
That's pretty cool.
But she was an age group
championships coming back to Memphis.
Yeah. Awesome.
Chapeau, as they say in the cycling world.
In Spanish.
In whatever language that is.
You got any shout-outs, Chris?
Yeah, actually, just before we popped on, I got a text from Anne-Marie Brace's dad, Chris, and she's been nominated for, I believe, the Shelby County Girls Cross Country Runner of the Year. She's one of 8 finalists for that.
Nice.
So,
excellent.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
And she was Newcomer of the Year,
yeah,
right?
So she got Newcomer of the Year on her team at Arlington. So, yeah. So way to go, Anne-Marie. Proud of you. Worked hard. That's
2 weeks in a row she's gotten shout-outs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Hey, how are those, how are the elite kids doing? MYA Elite kids?
Man, the elite kids are, they're doing well. They're crushing it. They ran yesterday at Shelby Farms despite the iffy conditions. It was cold. I guess you could call it snow. But anyways, they're doing good. Some of them have raced a few 5Ks already, and then some of them have done, one girl did a mile race over in Brentwood High School and ran her best time ever.
Awesome.
7th grader. So they're doing well. Ready to race. Be there next week.
Yeah,
Foot Locker.
yeah, buddy. Shout out Foot Locker Nationals. Coming to get you.
Yeah.
Funston, what do you got?
I'm doing a shout out to Mother Nature.
No, that's a shout at.
Oh. I want to shout out and at Mother Nature and say, hey, weather needs to go away. Let's get it back a little bit warm. You already killed the mosquitoes. That's why I was wanting cold weather.
That's important.
Now we can warm up just a little bit. But I'm escaping to Florida. It's supposed to be like 80 degrees. So
When are you going to Florida?
you guys can have the cold.
Chapeau.
Stay cold. stay cold, Memphis.
All right. So we're going to talk about first what you should be doing in the last 2.5, 3 weeks before a goal marathon.
Yeah, so we're assuming in this that you've actually done...
Yeah, we're making an assumption here.
You've done your training leading up to this point. You're 2.5 weeks out, and now we're going to be diving into what you should be doing these final 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yeah, so if you want to pull it into like one point, there's a lot more to it, but if you want to pull it into 1 point, you basically should be working on race pace or recovering. Doing a ton, as much race pace as possible, because if you do not work on a goal race pace, there is no way that you are going to run faster than you've been running in your longer runs on race day.
Yep.
It's true.
Anybody agree with that in there?
I'm agreeing.
Have you ever seen anybody run faster on race day than they have ran in any of their long runs?
This all goes back to like the whole slogan of our company is trust your training. So you have to have confidence in the fact that you can hold the pace that you have been training at. If you can't expect that you're going to show up on race day and that you're just a game time player and that what happens in practice doesn't matter. You show up on game day and suddenly you have like this amazing strength. It doesn't happen. Yeah. You need to.
Yeah, I've heard of game day speed before, but that's usually in like a 10-yard box.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, this isn't basketball we're talking about here.
No. Practice actually really counts in marathon training.
Practice is very, very important.
That's your specificity right there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've done it the way that we probably would do it, you're working on like top end speed on the front end because you're doing a longer event. This is not like working on a 20-minute event or less, or even up to like a 10K. We're working on going from less specific training to more specific training. That's kind of the basis of specificity. So if we're going, if we were making this program, we would basically go from speed work, high-end speed work, and then go into more tempo, into more race pacing for longer distances. So you're just basically building the duration that you can hold pace. So we're at the tail end here. You should basically be doing almost exclusively pace work. So when you get to so that's like 3 weeks out. When you get into let's say next week, 2 weeks out, you've got to start dialing back the volume. Mm-hmm. You've got to, so basically I would say, and Chris may have other input on this, but most of the time when I have a marathoner in the weekend before or the week before, their long run is no more than 10 to 12 miles max, and that's quite a big chunk of that will be race pace.
Yeah. I mean, that in my own running experience, that's what I've done. And then people that I coach, that's what we do too. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people want to maybe run up to 13 miles as long as they're not going faster than they want to race the marathon for that 13 miles. Sure. They're okay.
That's the key.
That's the huge key. Yeah.
You just, you want to, and the simplest way of thinking about it, you just want to kind of leave some stuff in the tank for your effort on Saturday if you're doing the St. Jude Marathon. And you can't do that if you're running hard and high intensity the last week, even if you're dialing down your mileage. So you just want to stick to, that last week, most things should be race pace. So
yeah,
I think that's the mileage number. There's no magic mileage number, but anything over 13 miles the week before is probably going to be a little too much.
I think that the key, like you said, is regardless of how far your long run is 2 weeks out, it should not be faster than marathon pace, because then you're just adding load back in. You took miles away to take down the workload, but you're adding it back in if you're adding workload back in if you are going harder than your marathon pace. Yeah. So that is the key. The one thing I will say, like, as far as, we're saying don't do, like, you don't need to be worrying about like track workouts and stuff like that per se. But one, I know you've used it with athletes and it's a very popular workout, but 3 weeks out or even the week of, early in the week, 2 weeks out, I like to use those Yasso 800s with a lot of people just to kind of check and see if the marathon pace that we've been training for is doable.
Yeah. And I think something people should pay attention to as well in that time frame is what their effort perception feels like, or the rate of perceived effort level. I mean, if you're running, let's say 2 weeks out, you run a 10 to 12 miler at marathon pace, and it feels really hard, then you're gonna probably, if you have a coach, talk to your coach about adjusting some of your training, or if you don't, you might want to look back and adjust some of your training, and then listen to your body. If you do those Yasso 800s, if they feel really hard at your marathon pace, then and you do those early in the week, 2 weeks out, you might want to think about why that happened. If it's because of lack of sleep or your stress level in life's gone up a little bit, maybe that's it. But if your training isn't going well for the past several weeks leading up to that, you might want to redefine how fast you think you're going to try to run. So those last few race-based runs can serve as a evaluation point for you as to whether or not you have a realistic goal for your marathon.
And really, really quick, for those who are unsure of what a Yasso 800 is, so the people that aren't able to hop on Google right now, dive into what that is real quick.
It's a dance move you do.
Yeah.
It's really cool dance move. No, Yasso 800s were kind of they're 800 meter half mile repetitions, and you do 10 of them. 10 by 800 meters is this kind of the standard, more advanced level of Yasso 800. So you'll run a half a mile, and then you'll recover for 2 to 3 minutes. Some people recover the same amount of time it took them to run the 800 or half mile, and then you'll do another one, and you do that for 10 times, and you run the 800 at the goal time that you want to run your marathon. So say if your goal for the marathon is 4 hours flat, or we'll say 3:59 because nobody has a 4 hour flat goal marathon time. It's always 3:59. So 3:59 marathon for the goal time. Then you run your 800 or half mile in 3:59. And you jog for 3 minutes and 59 seconds, and then you run another half mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And the easier that feels, the better chance that you have of actually running 3 hours and 59 minutes for your marathon. It's just a good way to evaluate your training.
It's not the end all be all. It's just a baseline workout that is pretty simple to knock out just about anywhere. So,
and just because you can do it and you run it and it feels, just because you finish it, if it feels really hard, it doesn't matter. It's about how that effort felt in relation to everything else in your training.
Where your training load currently is, the level of fatigue in the system will play a big impact on that.
Certainly.
So, in these last, let's just say the third week and the second week before your marathon, this is where you really have to dial in hydration and nutrition on your race pace runs. We need to know if your nutrition and hydration strategy that you've been working on, and you should have been working on, we need to know if this is actually going to work at race intensity.
Yep.
Because things change, and especially along a little bit elevated intensity, a couple hours down the road. Once we get beyond that 2 hour mark where it's you can, if you don't fuel correctly, you run out of muscle glycogen, or you get past that, you get into those bonking zones. We need to know if that strategy is going to work, and then work at intensity. So this is where you really need to focus on dialing that stuff in.
Exactly. That can be a make or breaker for so many people. If you've gone from not fueling in your training to suddenly on race day you decide, oh man, I'm going to need to fuel, that's way too late. Another thing, and we've talked about this quite a bit before, but what you're eating prior to, we did a whole Coaches on Couches dealing with meal timing and what you should do prior to more important training days and races. But you got to work that out as well. And if you're doing your training at a different time of day, so I've got some people who they'll do their long, more race specific stuff like in the afternoons. But if your race day is going to happen at 7 a.m. versus 3 p.m., that's a whole different thing that's going on with your body. You're coming in possibly underfueled after sleeping all night. You've essentially had that fast for 10 hours or whatever. And your body's not going to have the nutrition in it that it would have had at a 3 o'clock event. So you need to practice that.
Yeah, that means pre-exercise, pre-event meal, wake up time. If you want to get super specific, practice the same time you wake up, same start time, same pre-race meal, same race strategy, hydration, nutrition, everything. Practice everything in the last 3 weeks and just make it, second nature. Make it your thing. And normally, if that stuff works for you, I mean, I know I have athletes who've been doing the exact same breakfast and nutrition plan since I've been coaching them because it works. And they've never had a nutrition bonk or any problems. So, man, once that stuff's locked in, you don't have to worry about it anymore as long as you just keep going with it. It's the people who want to they go to the race expo and they're see this new thing and they're like, well, I'm going to try that.
Those look like some tasty jelly
beans.
Those look like some tasty jelly beans.
Pass
them on over.
Yeah, and then you get yourself into a pickle.
Chocolate covered bananas.
I see what you did there.
Blueberries on the race route.
Practice it now. And do not. Well, we'll get into the do not, but do not change it on race day. Yeah. Also, if you can kind of pulling off what Dale was saying there, if you can preview the course as well. He was talking about getting very specific with it. If you live where the race is taking place and you're able to do some of your training on the course, familiarity. There we go. It's a tough word.
Good try.
With the course is huge.
Yeah. Now, I actually ran a buddy and I ran the half marathon course, or just about all of it. We made one wrong turn, but a week ago, this past maybe 8 or 9 days ago. And it'll help us. I know it'll help me out a lot come St. Jude Half Marathon Day. And Brian's right. I mean, it helps your body learn, where the hills are, and you can kind of physically adjust to the demands of the race. But mentally too, it'll kind of set your mind at ease, and the more you know a course, the more it becomes like home field advantage, in running. If you know the course really well, it's going to seem a little bit shorter. So that definitely helps.
I think people underestimate how much stress and anxiety, like knowing the course, takes off of you on race day. Yeah. It is huge. Yeah. So any race you're doing, doesn't matter distance or whatever place, any race, if you can go preview the course as much as possible prior to race day, that is a massive advantage.
Yeah, if you can't run the whole half marathon route in one time, run certain sections of each mile and just kind of know when you're doing that run, that, okay, this is mile 11 or mile 12 of the half marathon route. Or
drive the rest of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have to run the whole thing. Yeah. So the week of the race, this should be pretty quick, but the week of the race, we're just doing enough. We're doing just enough to stay sharp. So the goal should be getting to the race day super fresh with your legs wide open and ready to go. So we don't want to do too little. Too little usually basically sends the body a signal that, hey, we're recovering. So shut everything down and let's put all those resources to recovery. And then obviously if you do too much, you get to race day and you're fatigued or, you're overstressed. So we're just doing enough. So most of the time, my athletes, the longest they'll ever run, if they're training for a marathon on race week, it'll be early in the week and they might do 45 minutes. And that'll be about the longest. And then the rest of the week is like 30s and maybe 20-minute, the day before, just to shake out run. Again, just enough to keep the legs opened. Same frequency of runs that they've been doing. I try not to change too much as far as the weekly layout because their body is like used to that and knows that. So if they've been having Monday off, they still get Monday off. Like nothing changes there. Just we dial back volume way back just to make sure that they get to race day perfect.
Yep. Better to be over-rested than overtrained, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did not. We were not the ones to come up with that.
No, I don't. I
But it's
didn't
great.
trademark that.
Nope.
It's a good one.
All right, so let's jump ahead. This is the stuff that we kind of sometimes think should be like duh, like, but these are things that you should not.
It's also stuff I've done wrong before.
Yeah. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this is
This gets the best of us.
experience
Yeah.
level.
Uh-huh.
Should not be doing. In this 3 week. Inside 3 weeks before a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main things you don't want to be doing is adding miles and intensity. So you're running race pace, you shouldn't be keeping your weekly mileage necessarily the same. You've added intensity. We're starting to try to like get the body to recover and peak, so to speak. So if you're adding in intensity with the same mileage you've been doing, you're just adding workload. So you're adding fatigue, and you're just going to continue to accumulate fatigue right up until race day, and that is not what you want. Agree with that?
100% agree with it. I've made that mistake before, and I think I would add to that, and adding miles and intensity is, if your goal is the marathon, don't do a race the week before to kind of see where you're at. Even if it's a 5K, you're like, oh, it's just a 5K. It's going to take me 20 minutes or whatever. Like, don't do that. I've done it before. Probably this is years ago when I was in the best shape of my life, and I ran a half marathon thinking I was just going to jog it, but I was so competitive that I went out and ended up racing it, and it felt very easy to run my marathon pace, very easy. But a week later, I did the marathon, and I wasn't able to keep that pace. I still did fine, but I couldn't run the pace I wanted to. So don't run your goal race out of yourself just for some other race that isn't as important to you. So
yeah, I think if you're a competitive person by nature, you can't put yourself into a race scenario without actually wanting to race it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, doing like if you're training for a marathon, if you do a 5K or even a 10K like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before, you're going to be pretty fit, and there's a good chance you're going to do really well at that. But it also can give you a false sense of marathon pace,
right.
And so you may go into the marathon and blow out in the first 10K, and then you're donezo.
Yeah.
So watch the racing within the last 3 weeks for sure. One of the things that we see a lot is people adding in training load via cross training. Strength training, and this is things they haven't been doing. Like, this is not just like you've been doing some cross training in your training and we're just keeping the same thing going. People think, well, I'm not running as much, so I can add in some more activity elsewhere.
I'll add extra walking.
No.
I'm going to add walks in.
No.
Yeah, not a good idea. So avoid adding stress, adding load anywhere if at all possible. You're supposed to be taking your mileage or your training load down, and so adding that back in via cycling, cross training, strength training, CrossFit, whatever else is whatever
soccer.
other.
We talked about soccer before too.
Gosh.
People going and getting themselves hurt playing soccer.
Really?
We're not hating on soccer per se.
We
However,
do like soccer.
we've had a lot of people who, I got the extra time. I'm going to go play do a little soccer.
Yeah, that's the thing is you have this extra time because you're not training as much, so you fill it with more activity.
Yep.
Fill your time with time
Recovery.
with family and recovery.
Yes.
But not with more activity.
Mm-mm. Save that for after the race.
Yeah.
Get back to cross training.
Yeah.
Post goal race.
Yeah.
Not the 3 weeks leading into it. That's like your prime time. Prime time prep, dialing everything in and maximizing recovery between those workouts.
Yeah. And we talked about a little bit already, which was, not necessarily worrying about speed work, but you don't really you shouldn't really be worrying about any type of like VO2 max work or like short intervals or anything like that, because it's not specific to your training. 2, it adds exponential training load, meaning fatigue, and then you're not going to gain anything in the last 3 weeks from those sessions. Your body takes a little bit longer to adapt, and so you're not just going to miraculously be able to run faster on race day because of you knocked out this really hard set of 400s in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So don't worry about hitting high end efforts. Hit race pace, race pace all day long. Anything else?
No, not that I can think of on the VO2 max end of it. You should not be. It's something I thought of when Brian was talking about the cross training stuff and adding an extra load is you shouldn't be worrying about doing cross training stuff just because I don't know how to say it. I want to say it nicely, but
just say it, Chris.
The goal, the exciting thing about having a goal is having a goal and staying committed to your goal. And again, this is areas I've goofed up on is, don't let your drive to exercise, don't just exercise for exercise sake. Stay committed to your goal. And sometimes sticking to your marathon goal means resting and letting your body adapt to the training within the last 3 weeks at the right time. So, don't waste 16 weeks or 12 weeks or 6, some people it's 6 months they train for marathons on the fact that you just want to de-stress from work or feel good because you exercised or check off another box on your training log or fill your Strava calendar. That stuff's not really going to matter in the marathon when you're tired at mile 20 because you crushed a CrossFit workout the last week or did a 3-hour elliptical session.
And nothing against any of those forms of activity.
I've done all forms of those activities, but I still do them every now and then.
I put my foot in my mouth on more than one occasion on training versus working out. Mm-hmm. And if you're seriously training for a marathon, don't kill your goal race with a random workout in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. And for me, that's the biggest thing personally I have done, and that's why I say it, just because I want to encourage people not to do that. I've done it in running, sometimes I've done it in cycling, and in other sports too I've done it. So just stick to your goal. The fun thing about having a goal is having the goal, and that's what makes the training worthwhile, is staying committed to that goal.
Sure. And so the last little, there's 3 things that you definitely don't want to change in the last 3 weeks. Clothes, your nutrition plan, and shoes.
Yeah.
Don't change any of those things. Sometimes if your shoes are bad and your feet start to hurt, go buy the exact same pair of shoes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Get the same pair of shoes and start breaking them in. If you can have 2 or 3 pairs of the same shoes, and train in them so that none of them, they last longer and they don't, you don't run up on the marathon and all of a sudden you have a pair of shoes that isn't working for you anymore. They don't last forever. So, if you need new shoes, don't go searching for a new pair of shoes. There's so many different variables in shoes these days, and models change like that. The shoe will never be the same once the new model comes out. So try to get the new pair of shoes. I have in my closet, I have a backup pair, had never been open pair of shoes just in case I needed them. I need them to train in leading into a goal race.
Yep.
Just because I love the shoe. It works for me. And
you bought it based on the color, correct?
I bought it solely based on the color. Yeah, no.
It's the best way to buy shoes.
Yeah.
And socks.
Yeah, it's got to be neon.
Yeah, neon is better.
So do not change those things. Now, here's where we get into the weird section where us as coaches, we'll put a disclaimer on it in the front end. We would never usually recommend half of this stuff for people to do. But if you're in like the last 3 weeks and you feel like you've totally botched your training, and I don't know, I don't want to put like necessarily a hard number on it, but if you've done less than like 14 miles and we're 3 weeks out, you're a little behind.
Yeah.
You're a little behind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not gonna, this is like, this
Especially
is not
if you're
uncommon.
new. Like if this is your first one and you've gotten behind,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have the built-in, you know, fitness level of someone who's done it for years and years and years, and you know you can get through
Right.
a full. You know, this is one of your first few, and you don't have that experience.
I would say the only reason we're putting this advice in is because over the years we've had a number of people get into this situation,
Oh, for sure.
and we've had to help them, you know, work their way out of it. So, I mean, I had a person come to me 9 weeks out of an Ironman and had barely done much anything.
Yep.
And he basically said, I'm going to do this regardless.
Yep.
Whoa.
So if you could just help me get as close, you know, as close. And so, you know, so it's, we have a lot of experience kind of necessarily working with less than ideal training scenarios. So, you know, if you're done less than like 14 miles, Chris was saying it earlier, keep in mind, you don't have to do the race.
No.
Like there's no rule that says
There's no law.
yeah,
that
you have to do it, but we understand that a lot of people sign up for races for reasons other than their own fitness, other than themselves, especially in the case of the St. Jude Marathon where, you know, we're trying to raise money for the kids at St. Jude, and it gets very emotional. So people get it in their head that they're going to do it one way or another, regardless. Yeah. But if you've done less than 14 miles and you're new to long distance running, I would probably recommend trying to drop to the half.
Yeah.
That would be my number one recommendation.
Yeah. And in the case of the St. Jude Marathon, they're not going to pull you off the course if you're a marathon runner that wants to drop down to the half. You can let them know through email, hey, I want to drop down to the half. Is that okay? Or you can just do the half. They're not going to mind you.
Your chip's going to read.
Check me if I'm wrong, somebody, but it'll read, and you paid more to do the marathon than the half. So, you know, that just you can drop down in most races, and I would recommend it if you haven't done something longer than 14 miles.
So what if you're the hard-headed person now, though, that says, I'm doing the full
no matter what.
No matter what. I just want to get through it. I know it's going to suck, but what do I need to do to make sure I number one, get there and I'm not injured, and number two, actually survive all 26 and change miles?
We're talking 3 weeks out point.
Yeah, this is 3 weeks out.
Okay,
so
3 weeks
we're going to
out
assume that you're...
Because I know there's people that are listening that are like, yeah, I'm in. I'm committed.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the whole thing. What should I do? Should I go out and
been 6
should
miles.
I go out and run 22 this weekend?
Nah.
Nah.
No, you're your first one.
No. So we're going to assume that you, and this could be a big assumption, that you've done double-digit runs, right? So 10, 12, hopefully you've gotten to around 14-ish, 13, half marathon distance, something like that in the last 3 weeks. You know, so this is like, in a pinch, disclaimer, like we would never recommend this for anybody normally.
Yes.
But what you can do is basically take a big jump and go from, 14 to, 14's not a terrible starting point, but 14 to 16 or 14 to like 17 or 18, you can make a jump of about 3 to 4 miles and survive it. That's not, if you've done enough running to get double digits, normally, a 3 to 4 mile jump is risky, but most people can survive it as long as they take it pretty easy. So that means like basically doing a walk run or a run walk schedule. So putting in at least a minute of walking every mile from the start. Not just running as far as you can go until your form completely breaks down and, but
don't start your walking when you need it. Start it scheduled in long before that.
Yes.
Yeah. So you schedule in the walk breaks and then do it from the gun and, as soon as your form really starts to break down, you're done. So like, if you've ran 10 or 13 or 14 and you get to 16 and your form you're completely done, and it could be a nutritional thing, but we're going to take that out of the scenario right now and assume that you've been working on that too. But if you get to 14 and your form is totally degraded, you're done.
Stop, yeah.
Don't press your luck. Know when to fold them. And 14 or 16 is better than 10.
And that gives you information for race day too. Like clearly your pace was probably too high, or maybe your walk break needs to be longer if you couldn't make it to that 16 or 18 number. Yeah. So you did something during that training day that you need to scale back so that you can get to 26.2 on race day. So that's a testing ground for you.
So
it gives you valuable info.
Yeah. And so now you have 2 weeks to the marathon. So realistically, the entire goal, if you've botched your training, is to gain enough fatigue resistance to be able to hold form and continue to run as long as possible to get to the finish line without hurting yourself. So now you're 2 weeks out. Let's say you've hit, on the low end, let's say you've hit 16 miles or something like that. We're 2 weeks out from the race. We can try to make that 3 to 4 mile jump in the last week. Now, I don't necessarily recommend doing that the Saturday or Sunday prior to the marathon. If that's the only choice you have, that's it. Go for it. Try to get in 19, 20 miles, the weekend before. Again, it's not ideal, but it can be done, and it'll get you...
Training for a marathon in 3 weeks is not ideal.
Yeah, no.
This is like, what should you do? How to make the best of a bad situation.
Right. But I would recommend trying to do that earlier in the week. So like if you did your really long run on the Saturday before, give yourself 4 to 5 days recovery, easy, maybe throw in a short run in there. But you're now going to basically do a mini little block and stack in another run, maybe Thursday, the next week. So now you're giving yourself a solid 10 days, 9-10 days to recover before the actual race. So you're not shortening your recovery to 6 days. You're adding in a couple extra days. So try to get in that last longer run midweek or late week. And if all you can do is get it in on the weekend, then so be it.
Scale, learn from your previous run you did. And your whole goal here is to apply a strategy that you can adjust and gives you more information on what you need to do on race day while building up fatigue resistance along the way.
Yeah.
So pay attention to what your body's doing and body's telling you. And the most important, like Dale already said, if you start falling apart, you need to shut it down. You're not going to gain anything by powering through that last 4 miles.
Save it for the day of.
Yeah, you're going to get yourself hurt. So
if you want to push yourself beyond limits, beyond your capability of holding form, do that on race day. If your goal is to really get to the finish line, wait till race day, because if you push yourself beyond being able to hold form prior to that, your risk of injury just grows exponentially. So
now, how do you guys feel about stacking days for someone who's in this last time crunch, so to speak?
Stacking days is a great way to increase load over a short period of time. I mean, I use that a lot with people in general. Especially people who don't have time to go out and knock out 20 miles on a weekend. Yeah. We can do 16 and 8 or 16 and 10. Yep. On the weekends, and you can use that as well. We're just assuming, we're trying to be as specific as possible. And if you've botched your training in the last 3 weeks, so doing one massive day is more similar to the one massive race day that you're going to do, in the marathon than splitting, 2 days. But it is a great effective strategy of bringing in training load for anybody who's training for a marathon. We use it all the time, especially for ultras. I mean, it's like a must. Yep. But in this specific less than ideal, crappy scenario, the one massive day is a little bit, more specific to what you're going to do. Now on race day, if this is you and you have botched your training, we're going to hope that you've gotten in. I mean, I've had people that have not exceeded 16 miles in any long run and done fine.
Botched runners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's.
I mean, not botched runners. I'm sorry.
There's a couple of. There's a few strategies out there where, the runner never does over 16 miles. But that's usually reserved for those who are pretty fast.
Yeah, and then their volume throughout the week is a lot higher than a lot of people who can't run that much.
Yeah, total volume during the week is high.
Yeah.
Your long run is just shorter.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, so we're going to assume that you got in at least 16. The big thing is you cannot afford to go out too hard. Nobody really can, but you can afford. You have less of a window to go out too hard. You need to make sure that you are hitting that walk-run or run-walk schedule from the gun, even if it feels super easy, because the last 10 miles are going to be a battle.
Oh, yeah.
So
you actually want the first 16 to feel easy.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Easier than normal and go slower than normal. And the St. Jude Marathon, it's kind of hard for a lot of people to start easier than normal because the first 7, 8, a lot of the first part of that course, almost all of it's downtown, and at mile 5 to 6, you'll run through the St. Jude campus, which is inspiring and motivating. And it's really hard to hold back there because you just naturally want to speed up and people are cheering for you, but you just got to listen to the voice in your head that says, stick to the plan, keep it easy while I'm in the first, 15, 16 miles.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point for anybody, not just people who have so-called botched their training, but anybody who's trained seriously and has done the work up to this point. You really can't afford to go out too hard in the first 10K, or you're gonna end up paying for it, big time. So
it will feel easier those first few miles.
Always
with
does.
all the people around, the crowd, the adrenaline.
You'll be wanting to roll, be like, look at me.
You are gonna, and then you start thinking to yourself, man, maybe I am just on a great day. Maybe I am a game day player.
Yeah.
This goes back to we're almost full circle now.
Yeah, go.
Unless you ran in some Olympic level event, you're not a game day player.
You're not going to be game day. You're not going to run a minute faster per mile than what you were struggling to do at the end of your runs and training.
And the consoling thought is that, and this is actually reassuring, and it's not a knock, is that nobody really honestly will care a whole lot if you botched your training and you ran 30 seconds per mile slower than you thought, or a mile, when you finish. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, you finished a marathon. That's amazing.
Sure.
I mean, I've done terrible in marathons and great, and the response, truth, is the same. Congrats on your marathon. You did awesome, especially at, that level. So just stay safe and be able to, finish the marathon if that is your goal.
Yeah, realistically, you've taken on a challenge for you, and even if you chose to do it for reasons other than yourself, you don't have to worry about what somebody else is going to say after the race. You're totally right. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're doing something that's quote unquote hard, and hard is relative to everybody. But if you're doing hard stuff, then
98% of the population would think marathon is a very hard, crazy idea.
Absolutely.
And so you don't have to worry about what other people think. You just go out there and get it done.
Yeah. They give you a course. They'll stop you from having an official finish time, I think, at the 6 hour mark. And so, I mean, you got 6 hours, I think, to finish it. And so if it's really, if the bottom's really falling out at, let's say, 18 miles, 19 miles, and you're thinking, I can't run anymore, but you're still going to finish under that 6 hour mark, my encouragement to you is to enjoy being out there, talk to people while you run and walk out there, and just enjoy the environment, and don't push yourself too far, because you're going to have to go to work on Monday, And that is an important thing for most folks, to be able to go to work and keep, making money so they can keep doing training and running. And so,
yeah, so hopefully you can organize your training a little bit better for the next one.
A little more on the time management skills.
We're not so worried about what your finishing time is, but if you were in it to do the best race you could possibly do, and you kind of quote unquote botched it, then hopefully it turns into a learning experience and you turn it around next time. But I think that's all we got for today. We went pretty long on that one, but being so close to the St. Jude Marathon, I figured this is a pretty good topic for most people. Anybody got any closing remarks, Council?
No, I think go into it knowing it's going to get hard at mile. It'll vary for people, but I mean those last 6 miles aren't going to feel good for anyone. So don't expect your race to feel easy.
Not going to feel good.
Know it's going to be hard. The reason you're doing it is to challenge yourself. So just embrace the fact that you're suffering, everyone else is suffering, and you gotta power through.
Embrace the suck.
Embrace the pain. I think my last little piece of it, advice is just keep it in perspective. It's a marathon. I'm speaking of the St. Jude Marathon, and a lot of marathons these days actually are. They're big events where you can do some fundraising. So keep that in perspective, and you're doing something that's going to bring awareness to an important issue for millions of folks. I know in St. Jude it's a big event for the city. So enjoy it, and don't be a grumpy runner if you're not running your goal time. That's okay. If you're safe about it and you're smart and you botched your training, you can still finish it and be smart and do better the next time.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, listening. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios.
Peace.